can you tell me about these two men? They look like the same guy, but they're not. What do you know? The one in the tan jumpsuit's been planting CDIs in family homes for years. The origins of the Philips CDI are only interesting because of two things. The first is that the Philips Corporation as we know it today is no longer even remotely close to the tech conglomerate it once was, making research a bit difficult as the company has fundamentally changed. And the other is a collection of incorrect articles dating back decades, which have resulted in misnomers about the system's birth, mistakenly linking the CDI's creation to Nintendo. The misinformation about the consoles only lingered on, impacting other sources, causing a chain of false claims about the console's birth. Now, thanks to the widespread use of AI models scraping the internet for information, this misinformation has only become more prevalent because of AI's inability to validate sources. The false claims are a result of a game of telephone played across decades of online articles. The CDI lie has to do with the claim that the CDI console was a direct result of the Philips Nintendo deal, which that deal was an agreement where Philips would work towards developing a CD add-on for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This is incorrect. The CDI was already in development before the Nintendo-Philips deal was even inked, with the deal only being publicly announced in September of 1991. The Philips CDI was released in October of 91. 1 month seems like a bit of a stretch to launch your own fully fledged multimedia console. The Philips Nintendo deal only gets more complex when you look at the external factors in it. Those factors being that Nintendo wanted to very publicly stab Sony in the face in such a manner to knock them out of the market, and prevent them from ever wanting to make a game console. Which, the nature of these agreements honestly merit their own independent discussion, which I tried to cover in a video unsuccessfully 7 or so years ago where I was met with deadlock trying to get Philips to talk about the CD deal. Now, onto the articles in question that I believe are the spreading points of this misinformation. The first article, which I believe to be the origin of this error, is What is the CDI? This article was published on worldofcdi.com. The article states, after having a finished prototype, Sony decided to jump into the gaming market alone, and with a new system stronger than the prototype that was named PlayStation. With the lost time between Sony and Philips' development for the Nintendo system, Sega was already in the market with the Sega CD, and Nintendo again canceled the deal. No SNES CD at all. But after all that development made by Philips, the company decided to launch their own system into the market. The CDI dream took place, and the multimedia system turned true. To compensate for the lost work by Philips, the Japanese company decided to offer the rights of 3 famous Nintendo characters. This is why the CDI is the only system outside of Japan where you can find games like Link, Zelda, and Mario. The line, no SNES CD at all. But after all that development made by Philips, the company decided to launch their system into the market. Stands out to me because I believe that line can be taken in 2 ways. Either the Philips CDI was being delayed because of the SNES add-on, or Philips took whatever they developed and turned that into the CDI. Both of which I don't think are entirely correct, given the short duration of time between the CDI's launch and when the Philips Nintendo deal was announced. But I believe this line is probably where the game of telephone begins, as the World of CDI website, despite this bit of false information, is a very solid source for other things CDI.
See amazing movies, man.
The next article I found dates back to February of 2016, posted on Nintendojo.com. The article states, after the deal failed to come to fruition, Philips decided it didn't want to waste the effort it expended working with Nintendo. It would go on to build its own gaming system, much like Sony had. After all, Philips had done it before, so there was reason internally to believe it could do so again. Again, the timelines don't work here. So, if you line up the Nintendo deal with the console's launch, it's just not possible. And also, it's kind of funny considering, the Sony deal and them creating their own PlayStation happened after this whole thing came to fruition, so Philips technically had their console out first even before the deal, so this really didn't motivate anything there. Then another article from March of 2016 on atlasobscura.com says something very similar. Born out of the same aborted efforts to create a CD-based console for Nintendo that would eventually produce the Sony PlayStation, the CDI was an ambitious attempt to create a multi-purpose home entertainment console. I believe this article, posted just a month later, took that line from Nintendojo and then expanded it, making the claim a bit more bold. But these three articles have resulted in a bit of misinformation, while I don't believe there's malice involved in it. It's that we as a society have gotten a little too trusting of internet sources, and when something is presented by an established website, we tend to think of it as having a type of institutional backing, giving it a bit more credibility. Unfortunately, we're all human. We make mistakes. I've done it, and in reality, no one really knows what they're doing. We're all just trying our best. The CDI truth is way more boring than the internet the story has to offer, sadly. So I'm really not that shocked that people looked for a more exciting and deeper reason for the Philips CDI, given that its actual birth is just a cold corporate response to a new CD standard.
Meaning you don't just sit and watch it, you control.
The system was the result of Philips, Sony, and Matsuda developing a CD standard containing interactive combinations of sound, images, and computer instructions in the mid-1980s, which resulted in Philips ultimately taking the new standard and developing a multimedia console around it, and releasing it in October of 1991. But what was perhaps the most unique thing about that development of the CD add-on for the SNES by Philips was that any game developed for the CD add-on would be cross-compatible with the Philips CDI itself. And this was stated by the production lead of Hotel Mario and the Zelda games.
How far back does this thing go anyway?
All the way, Phil.
And that's it. That's the CDI's birth. The Nintendo deal had an impact for sure, with Philips getting access to Nintendo characters for games, but that was about all the deal amounted to. It wasn't the genesis of the CDI.
If I can use it, anybody can. I mean, I can't even set my VCR. It's very sharp.
I plan on making a more in-depth video about the CDI at a later time. But this was a video just about the frustrations I've dealt with in terms of finding information about the console, and I just kind of wanted to share it with you. And, do something silly with FMV. Thanks for stopping by.